Good day and welcome to the MacArthur Foundation 100&Change Peer Review Training Webinar number 1. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Lynn Vandy Venter. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for the first peer-to-peer review training session for the MacArthur Foundation's 100&Change competition. My name is Lynn Van Devender, and I work with Common Pool, the agency that is supporting the MacArthur Foundation in this program. With me on the phone today, I have two colleagues, Jenny and Ethan. You will be hearing from both of them shortly. I do want to let you know that this session is being recorded, and we will be sharing the recording with you via email and also on the forums post. If you have a question today, we're going to try to answer as many of them as we can. Please enter your questions into the chat box. We have a short agenda today. In just a moment, I'm going to turn things over to Cecilia Conrad. She will speak about the program and why we're using peer review as an evaluation method for 100&Change. I will speak a little bit about the fairness aspect of the normalization routine, and Ethan from our team will give you a demonstration of how to score and comment on the applications that have been assigned to you. I do want to remind everyone that it's extremely important to complete all 5 of your required peer reviews no later than Wednesday, September 18th, 2019 at 11 a.m. U.S. Central Time. You must complete your 5 required reviews by that deadline in order to remain eligible for the $100 million grant. And with that, I'll turn things over to Cecilia Conrad.
Hello, congratulations for advancing to the next stage in the 100&Change competition. And as Lynn said, good morning, good middle day, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the globe. One of the things that I just figured out from the current 100&Change is that over nearly half of the applications are based in countries outside of the U.S., so it's very exciting. I wanted to say a little bit about why we are doing peer-to-peer review. In the first 100&Change, some of the feedback we got from participants is that they found the conversation, the constructive advice and criticism that they received from the evaluation panel, from the judges, to be incredibly valuable. We've had reports of people taking that information, revising their applications, applying for funding in places that may have applied to before and actually this time having success. So we thought that it would be really valuable to give more feedback to participants in 100&Change this time around. And we actually are planning for 3 levels of review. The first is this peer-to-peer review process that we are talking about today. And then, of course, we have the Wise Head panel. And then if you are advanced far enough along, there are more in-depth technical reviews. And feedback will be given to applicants from each one of those stages. Before we decided to do peer-to-peer review, we talked to some people who had applied to other competitions where peer-to-peer review was a feature. And this gave us some more arguments in favor of using it. First of all, what we heard was that giving feedback is just about as valuable as getting feedback in some cases. It makes you really dig in to think about what the rubric means, what it is we're looking for, to identify questions that need to be addressed, and you'll be reading applications that are related to your own work. And so you'll find that there'll be things that you learn from reading other applications that may help and influence you. We also, one of the things we saw from the first 100&Change as we read applications, so there were many times where I said, I really wish these 2 projects knew each other. And what we heard from applicants who've done peer-to-peer review is that they sometimes forged new relationships, found new partnerships, or just found people that they could learn together with through this peer-to-peer review process. So all of that, I think, are some value adds of participation. I do understand that it requires some additional time on your part. And I want to close by just making a few comments about how to give a good peer-to-peer review. And then later, I can go through some of the particular rubric if you'd like me to, I think once we get through the demonstration walkthrough. So the first thing you want to do, though, is to pay close attention, if you've not already done so, to those review criteria and the scoring rubric. You probably discovered in preparing your application that you can move that sort of little rubric scale and see what are the ways we've defined a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and 5. So pay close attention to that as you give feedback. The second is to be kind and professional in your feedback. Remember that these are other applicants just like you. People have given it their best, and so you want to be as generous as possible in your commentary. Provide clear and concise comments and give concrete advice about what could be improved. For each one of the scoring rubrics, cite something specific that helps to explain why you've given it the score that you have. Pose any questions you think that the applicant should think about that wasn't addressed in the application. Identify any information that you think might be valuable to add, but also call out what was particularly persuasive so that applicants will know going forward what they might want to emphasize in the future. Be aware that we are asking people, we've grouped people by thematic areas based on what you identified in your application, but we do not expect you to be a specialist in every field that the applicants are in. So you're reading it using that rubric and using that criteria and using your judgment as somebody who is active, knowledgeable, and actually has kind of probably the practical on-the-ground experience that at later stages of review may not be as prevalent. Also be aware of any unconscious biases that you might have. And think about that as you're scoring to make sure that you're scoring based on the information that's in the application or what you've seen in the video, and not based on some criteria that's not part of the competition. And with that, I'm going to turn this to Lynn, and then, as I said later on, I may come in to talk about the individual rubric pieces.
Great. Thank you, Cecilia. So the first thing that I want to remind folks about is that during this peer-to-peer review period, each applicant will comment on 5 other applications within the same domain using the 4 criteria included in the scoring rubric: impactful, evidence-based, feasible, and durable. This is the same scoring rubric that the WISE Head panel will use. One question that we often get asked about is, how is this process fair? And scores will be calculated using an algorithm that ensures a level playing field for all applicants. And in addition to scoring each applicant on the 4 criteria, as you'll see in just a few minutes, peer reviewers will also provide an overall impression of the score, which we use as a tiebreaker. And we really ask, as Cecilia said, that each peer-to-peer reviewer carefully read the applications and provide meaningful feedback. The results of the peer review will result in a rank order of all valid submissions, and based on that rank order of scores, up to 500 applications will move forward to the WISE Head panel review. I just want to talk briefly about this idea of fairness. So one question we often get asked is, well, what if I'm assigned someone who scores my application harder than my neighbor or my fellow applicant? And through our normalization routine, as we've published our algorithm on the website, if you haven't read this page already, we really encourage you to view it, and if you have questions about it, feel free to send us a note at questions@100&change.org, but we lay out exactly the process that we use there. And the way that we address this issue is that each application we use a mathematical technique relying on 2 measures of distribution, the mean and the standard deviation. And this calculation levels out those scores so that all applications are treated fairly. And then the other thing that I just really want to remind you of is, Ethan, if you could go to the timeline, please. Is that in order for your application to remain eligible and to move forward, have the opportunity to move forward to the next round of review, you must score and complete on all 5 of the applications assigned to you. These must be completed no later than Wednesday, September 18th, 2019 at 11 a.m. U.S. Central Time. Please do not wait until the last minute. Our team is standing by. Many of you have already sent in some questions. We will get to as many questions today on the phone as we can, but please do complete them by that time. Please note, Ethan, if you could just scroll down again, that it's likely we will have some applicants that do not complete their work, which means that these reviews will need to be redistributed. So you may be asked to complete some additional reviews. So you may be asked to score and comment on a few additional applications during this time period here from September 19th to 24th. And again, if you were asked to do additional reviews, those will need to be completed Tuesday, September 24th, 2019 at 11 a.m. U.S. Central Time. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Ethan, who is going to log into the back end and demonstrate the process for scoring and commenting on an application.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. This is Ethan. I'm going to go ahead. I'm already logged in here to our dashboard. I'm going to go ahead and go through the peer review process with you of completing a full review. So when you log in, go ahead and click on peer review. And for the, I'm going to mention the deadline is at the top here, so you'll be reminded. And you can also view a tutorial. So if you get stuck on a certain spot within the process, you can always view this quick 2.5-minute tutorial, which is linkable there. And then also you can email any questions to us at 100&Change, questions@100&Change.org at any time. We're happy to answer them. So for the purpose of this demonstration, I've got completed reviews over here. These are ones that I've already done. But I should be able to show you the optional reviews that will pop up after your first 5 required reviews pop up. So I'm going to go ahead and click Start Review on my last review. This is my last required review. When I get to this page, I'm going to click on the registration form. And to make sure that you review the registration form as well as the application form, give them a thorough review before you move into the trait scoring rubric. And you can keep them open when you're in the rubric as well. You won't be able to get past this page until you have those 2 tabs open of the application and registration form. And now you'll see, just as Cecilia and Lynn were talking about the rubric, but you'll see a little bit more extended version of it with the 4 traits across the top here. And going down to the bottom here, you'll see the slider. You can go ahead and select your score for this particular trait, in this case impactful. And then I'm going to go ahead. Your feedback in the comment box needs to be at least 10 words or more.
And let me add something here, Ethan. When you're writing your feedback, it is okay that you might have more lengthier feedback on some attributes than others. You have to meet the minimum of 10 words for each one. But I think good feedback could actually really focus on one more than the others, and that's okay.
Thank you, Cecilia. I'm going to move through to the next step here. And go ahead and make my selection. And then I'm also going to show you at the top here so you'll know you can see your scores in the tabs here. So if you forget a score as you're moving through, you can see that. And at the end you can move back through any of these traits as well. So if you decide to adjust something or reread the application. And now we are on, second to last, we're on the last. We're on durable. And then for step 6 of 7, this is your overall impression. And this gives us, as well as giving you an opportunity to have an overall impression, it also gives our team a tiebreaker. So if your trait scoring, if this application's trait scoring rubric was to match or tie with another one, with another application, this overall impression gives us a tiebreaker in our system. And here's the final page. This is just a summary. I could go back to any of the traits and move through them again from this page. So if I wanted to adjust my idea of durable for this particular application, I could go back and change it and then run through 6 of 7 again. And then at this point, I'm going to click Save and Exit. You could still click No there to get back into it, but I'm going to go ahead and click Yes. And you'll notice I've got my 5 completed reviews right here. I can toggle between the completion status, the date modified, the score, organization name, applicant, as well as application number. And you'll notice I've completed my 5, and just as I mentioned at the top, I can go back here and start doing any of those 15 optional reviews. We encourage you to do those. They are not required, but you do need to make sure that these 5 completed reviews are in the Completed Reviews tab to make sure that your application remains eligible for the 100 million grant. And again, feel free to email us questions at 100&Change.org. Our team will help you with any part of the scoring process. And again, there also is a quicker video tutorial that you can check there at the top as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Jenny and Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ethan. Yes, we will go ahead and jump into the Q&A portion of the webinar. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and enter them in the chat box now. And I have quite a few that we'll go ahead and jump into. First question, how can we download the different applications we are slated to peer review so more than one person can review at our company? Or would each reviewer need to log in to view the application?
Hi, this is Lynn. So yes, the system was just designed to be completely online, an online scoring and commenting system. So yes, you need to log in as the reviewer to be able to review and score and comment on those applications.
But Lynn, does that mean that the same person has to review all 5, or is it possible to divide the work up among the team if each one just logs in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we really encourage the person who is listed as the primary contact on your application to be the person who is the peer reviewer. We do encourage the reviews. While some organizations may want to take a team approach, and that's certainly fine, we do strongly recommend that it is the primary contact that completes those reviews.
Great, thank you. Can we address the issue with the audited financials and how that they have been removed from the application, and just explain a little about that, please?
Yes, so we've had quite a lot of questions about this that came through, both the questions at 100&Change.org and on the forums in the past couple of days. Please be assured that your financial statements did not disappear from your application. We did hide them because a decision was made not to share organizations' financial statements with peer reviewers. So please rest assured that the Mcarthur Foundation still has access to them. They did not disappear. And please know that everything is okay. But if you have a specific question about your application, I know this person was asking, it sounded like their organization had submitted 2 applications and one perhaps passed administrative review and the other didn't. I believe this person has already sent in a question to questions at 100&Change, and we certainly will be investigating and responding.
Thank you, Lynn. Next question, will you be sending these slides to all participants after the presentation, or should I take notes on the content?
You certainly may take notes, but we will be sending out a recording to all applicants. To all peer reviewers once we have the recording available. We'll also be posting it in the forums.
Thank you. Next question, can you share with us how many applicants there are at this stage?
I see that there were several questions about the number of applications and the number passing on to peer review. And I believe that we have 755 applicants total, and that it's 400 and I'm gonna estimate that number. 471. 471 that have passed on to peer-to-peer review.
Great, thank you, Cecilia. Next question, how long do you expect a typical peer-to-peer review to take? How many minutes, days, hours, etc.?
Well, it takes probably, oh, go ahead, Lynn.
No, go ahead. I was just going to ask if you wanted me to answer, but please go ahead.
Well, you start, and then I'll pick up.
Yeah, so again, we ask that you be thoughtful and provide meaningful feedback. We typically think that it probably takes between 20 minutes to 40 minutes per application. So I guess that would be, I don't know, less than 5 hours. Sorry, Cecilia, we're going to say something different.
Well, I was just going to add to that I think you have an advantage over our evaluation panel because you are at this point intimately familiar with the application and where different pieces of information lie. So I think you'll probably be along the shorter end of that.
Thank you. Next question, will we have access to the MOUs of the applications we review?
Yes, if a memorandum of understanding was included as part of the application because there was a partnership for that particular application, it will be accessible within the application you're reviewing.
Great. Next question. How many fellow applicants will review my application, and will I know who evaluated me?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Cecilia. No, I'm sorry. It's hard when we're not in the same room. Your application will receive 5 sets of scores and comments. So 5 fellow applicants will be reviewing your application. And I'll let you finish the rest of the question there, Cecilia.
I was just going to say that it is anonymous, the comments that you receive. So you'll receive 5 reviewers' comments. That's correct, right, Lynn? That it's anonymous?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then I'll just note that there was a question about the number, so let me clarify because earlier I think Lynn said 500 go on to the next stage, and it's up to is what we said in terms of if you read the rules of the competition. So the number that goes on is not guaranteed to be 500, in which case it would be everyone. It is up to 500.
Great, thank you. Next question, will good quality reviews I make improve my chances of winning the competition?
The quick answer is no. It's going to be based on your application and a holistic review of all of the scores that go to that move forward.
Great,
However,
very similar next question.
Yes, so we do want you to be a good actor and provide quality, meaningful feedback.
Yes, very similar. A follow-up question, does our assessment affect our application?
I'm sorry, could you say that again? Wasn't this the application we just, say it again, please.
Yes, does our assessment that we provide affect our own application?
No, it does not, but you do have to complete the 5 reviews.
Great. Next question, what if we get a proposal from a sphere outside of our domain experience?
Well, we have grouped things in fairly large domains for the assignment process, and we expect that the criteria that we have developed, that you should be able to review it based on your knowledge in general of this field of trying to make important social change happen. So you are not necessarily going to be a specialist in all of the areas that you receive assigned to you for peer-to-peer review.
Great, thank you. Next question, will we receive feedback and scores from all evaluation phases?
Yes. Now, of course, not everyone will pass through to every evaluation stage, but for every stage where you are evaluated, you will get the feedback.
and I believe this next question we covered, but I think reiterating would be great. Who from your organization is allowed to conduct these peer reviews? Does it need to be one of the key personnel listed in the application, or could it be another member of the project team?
Yes, we strongly encourage that the primary contact listed on the application is the person completing the peer review.
Thank you. Next question, is there a word count limit to feedback?
I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't think there is, but you must at least enter at least 10 words.
Great. Next question, where do I see the applicant's submission? So maybe Ethan, if you could just show once more where you find the application and registration form.
Yes, when you first start your review, the very first panel of your first pane of the review requires you to open up the registration and the application form. And again, if you're not able to find it, feel free to, there, Ethan is pulling it up there. So as soon as you click that Start Review, you'll see the registration form and the application form, and you're required to open those.
Great. Next question. Will we be able to stop and start a review of a particular application, or does it need to be completed all in one sitting?
You may stop and start. Just be sure you click that Save and Exit button up in the right-hand corner there that Ethan is showing on the screen.
Great. Next question. Is it recommended to complete one application at a time, or one rubric for all 5 applications at a time, or does it matter?
It actually doesn't matter, and it is preference of the reviewer. Some reviewers like to go through and score everything and then come back and adjust. It's really up to you and your preference.
Thank you. Next question, do we need to press Submit, or will whatever we have saved in completed reviews by the deadline count as our submission?
The latter. So there's no submit. You just need to make sure that that completed reviews has 5, that number 5, just like Ethan is showing there. So this is a completed peer review screen right here. It shows that it has 1 open review, but that's optional. The 5 completed reviews are in that tab.
Great, thank you, Lynn. Next question, when will we be notified if we reach the next stage?
I think I don't have the timeline in front of me, so I can post that, get that posted on the forum for you a little bit later. The timeline is actually on the website.
Yeah, I don't think we've set a specific date about that yet. I think it will just be likely sometime after peer review ends, within a week or 2.
Great, thank you. Next question, what is the impact, if any, of doing or not doing the 15 optional reviews?
So there's no impact in terms of your application remaining eligible. However, it does help shorten the peer review timeline because we can't move forward until all 471 applications have received 5 reviews. So you can imagine there may be, a small percentage of applicants that for some reason are not able to complete their peer reviews. Those reviews that were assigned to them still need to be completed in order for us to be able to run the normalization routine and end up in a rank order result of all applications that have received peer reviews. So any optional reviews you do help us with that process. Again, they are completely optional and they do not impact the ability of your application to move forward. You do, however, need to complete those 5 reviews.
Thank you, Lynn. Next question, does the rating system allow you to read all of the proposals prior to grading?
Yes, you may do that. You can just start each review and read the application and the registration form and then go back and do your scores and comments.
Thank you, Lynn. I think you just covered this, but one more question related to this. Do we get points for completing more reviews beyond the required 5?
You do not get any points, but, but you will get our thanks.
Next question, what is the expectation of scoring methodology? Are we expected to read all supplementary documentation to better understand the research methodology?
Well, what we have said to you when you were preparing your applications is that we've asked the judges to read what you have submitted as part of the application, that they are not required to follow all of the links, and the same applies to you.
Great. I believe we covered this already again, but a few more questions related to it. Are my comments shown to the applicant as coming from me, or is it anonymous?
It's anonymous.
Next question, will there be an opportunity to edit any of the 5 original reviews after they have been reviewed and saved by the September 18th deadline?
No. Once the September 18th deadline has passed, you can no longer edit those reviews.
Okay, one moment. Many questions about will we know what organizations reviewed our applications? No, everything will be anonymous. Here's a question. Is it possible to see a sample proposal that has been scored to help calibrate our scores?
No.
Next question, are you able to pick out a reviewer who may not be knowledgeable on an area?
I'm not sure what the question says, but no, as I stated earlier, we understand that you may not have deep knowledge of every particular application that you're reading. We expect you to be, we know that you are smart and talented and will be able to make good judgments and pass on those scores and write comments. This is a multi-stage review process, and we are looking for different types of insights at every stage of the review. So I'll just answer right now. I see a question here about due diligence to confirm what the applicants state. Rest assured that if an application makes it to the final stage in 100&Change, there will be extensive due diligence and follow through. So remember that this is the first stage in a 3-stage review process. And the second stage will have the wise head review, and the third stage will have more technical reviews. So what we ask here is that you, as someone who has thought about how to solve a problem and has put together a plan for how to do it, to look at other plans and give honest feedback on those plans, the best that you can do.
Great, thank you, Cecilia. I think here's a new question. Is it possible to recuse yourself from a review if you are personally familiar with the people or organizations who submitted and request a new application to review?
Yes, it is. However, if you feel that you are unable to review an application because you have a close relationship with the organization that whose application you're reviewing, and by close relationship I mean your spouse is on the board, you used to work there 6 months ago, you have some sort of financial interest in the organization, then yes, you may email us at questions@100&change.org and ask to have that review replaced in your queue. We do not anticipate that there are going to be a lot of situations like that, so please, if you are able, do review the applications assigned to you. However, if you do have a conflict of interest, please let us know and we'll help you out. Jenny, I want to answer this question about the MOUs, if you don't mind reading it.
Yes, 2 of our review proposals include MOUs, but the MOUs don't include all of the organizations listed in this proposal as partners. Is this acceptable?
We have gone through administrative review, and you should assume that the MOUs have passed through that process where we've assessed them. It isn't really part overall of the judging criteria at this place, so I would not take the role of trying to assess the quality of the MOUs.
Thank you. Next question, is it acceptable to discuss proposals with others who are not applicants in order to get additional opinions and information?
We're looking for you to use your best judgment. I can understand where you might want to do some consultations if it's a space where you know someone who's familiar. I'd ask that you not share the name of the organization that you're reviewing at that point, but you should be able to ask a generic question if there's something specific you want to find out. To apply the criteria. But yes, but please focus on the 4 criteria.
Great. Thank you, Cecilia. Next question, what are some key elements of a review that can be most helpful or impactful?
Well, I went over some of these at the beginning, and so I will recap a little bit of that. What we've heard from people, and you're in a position to judge as well, is that it's very helpful when a reviewer can first of all cite something specific that they're responding to or reacting to, as opposed to making some global statement such as, oh, this is terrible or this is great. And part of citing that specific sort of information that they're referring to is to both identify information that's particularly persuasive or an argument that really makes a strong case and saying and acknowledging that that's a strong argument that should be repeated, identifying questions that came up for you as you read the application that you wish the applicant had addressed so that they'll know that that's something that people are thinking about, identify information or data that you think would be helpful to include. If you are familiar enough to know that there's some evidence that they haven't cited that they might want to, offer that explanation. If you spotted some risk that the organization hasn't contemplated, then it would be helpful to cite those or raise those. If you've identified some benefits that you think may flow from this particular solution that haven't been identified, to cite those. I think the real thing is to be clear and concise, and to be concrete as much as possible.
Wonderful, thank you, Cecilia.
And again, I just am seeing a lot of questions here about the 471 applicants and the 500. Cecilia cleared this up, but I apologize for causing this confusion. Not all applications will be moving forward to the WiseHead panel. It will just be a subset of those that have received peer review. So not all of them will be moving forward. And again, I apologize about creating that confusion.
And it will be based on the scores in peer-to-peer review.
Great, thank you for clarifying. There are many questions related to that.
Someone asked if there was a particular threshold. No, because we don't know what the distribution of scores looks like, so I can't identify a specific threshold at this point.
Great. We have a couple of questions about fairness. How can we guarantee that a peer organization would not unfairly review our application if it is perceived as competitive to them?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's a question that we always get when we do peer review. And I can tell you it just doesn't happen. And certainly if you're concerned about that or you feel like it has happened, please let us know. I've helped to manage this peer review process on many, many, many competitions with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, really thousands of reviews having been completed. And I know this is something that people worry about, but really we trust that all of you are folks who care about this process, who care about the program, and want to see bold solutions come to life through this competition program. And if there is a question, please let us know. I've certainly had people ask a question in the past, and I've gone back and reviewed things, and I have not yet once found a situation where someone intentionally did that. I know it's a worry. Please just know that we know that you will all do a good job and that you will provide meaningful feedback just like you want to receive on your application. So thank you in advance for doing that.
Thank you, Lynn. Next question, how will this facilitate collaboration if reviewers remain anonymous? Can we opt out of being anonymous?
Once this entire process is completed, you should feel free to go to an organization and make a connection and reveal that you were one of the reviewers.
Great. Here's a good one too. Does the profile section on the application dashboard impact our peer review or other parts of the review process?
No, that profile section is an optional part of the system, and there's nothing that you need to do there. Some people enjoy posting additional information about themselves as a way to collaborate and get to know other people, but it is not a required section.
Great. Next question. Can one comment on the technical content of the proposal if not relevant directly to any of the 4 criteria?
Well, I think it's hard to imagine it wouldn't be relevant to one of the 4 criteria, so I'm having trouble answering the question, either in the context of thinking about impact or durability or evidence, but if it's relevant to none of them, then there wouldn't be a place for you to respond. You are to focus on the 4 criteria.
Great, thank you. Is there a time during the process where we can modify our application?
If you advance and become a finalist for 100&Change, there is a second stage where you will be asked to produce a revised application. But before then, no.
Great. Next question. Does Mcarthur provide any further assistance to applicants who do not go through to the next and subsequent stages? Yes, so let me identify several elements.
First of all, as I've stated, you will get feedback for the stages of review that you have progressed, through which you have progressed. Second, you will ultimately become part of a solutions bank of 100&Change proposals that exist at Candid, formerly known as the Foundation Center. You can go and visit that Solutions Bank now. If you just look up 100&Change in Solutions Bank, it will show up in Google, and get a sense of that and what information that has available. We routinely are trying to direct donors to that as a source of ideas if they're looking in specific areas. And we have heard of organizations getting new donor relationships developed out of having been part of that Solutions Bank. If you advance to the top 100 stage of the competition, there are some other kinds of benefits that you may receive in terms of technical assistance and support and so forth.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cecilia. We have a question just asking Ethan to show once more where you can save your reviews prior to final submit. So if you could just walk through that, kind of working on them and saving them as you go process once more, Ethan, that would be great.
Sure, I'll go through the trait scoring rubric one more time here. In the first part of the step, you do need to view these and have them open in a tab. I've already done that. I'm going to open them again so you can see that process. So now, once I've viewed those materials, I can go ahead and move through the traits. So you've got your 4 traits at the top here. First one is impactful. For our purposes, I'm just going to copy in some text here for our comment, but normally you'd want to make your 10-word comment, choose your score, and then you can see the definitions move, what your answer is. So all the way from poor all the way to transformative, minimal to transformative, I should say. Do the same thing for each trait. And remember, your work is getting saved the entire time you're moving through this. So as soon as I click Next, it's in the system. And your scores appear there as you move through them. And I'm on Feasible. I'm going to make a selection. One thing you do need to know, or should note, is that if you do need to move this. So you should move this one way or the other. Even if you're going to choose a 2.5, you should move it through the scale. I'm on the last one now, durable. And then again, you give your overall impression. On the final page, you'll get a scoring summary, and you can move back to any of the traits from there by clicking on them and going through the process again. You can click Save and Exit there, or up here. These 2 buttons effectively do the same thing, and here. And then your review is complete. Then at that point, you can see I've got another optional review that's popped up here, but I've completed 5 of my regular reviews. Those are the 5 that I needed to complete, as well as 1 optional review so far. And like Lynn said, you can move back and edit these up until September 18th. So the deadline there.
Perfect. Thank you, Ethan. We have a few minutes left. We have a couple questions in here about the video, if people should be viewing, and just kind of how the 90-second video plays into the overall judging of the application.
And Ethan, can you go ahead and show the spot in the application where the video is able to be viewed?
And while you're doing that, let me say that I am working my way through reading all of the applications and really enjoying reading them. There's some great ideas in here, and you should all be congratulated for that. I have found the videos sometimes are a really quick overview of the entire project that can be really helpful in reading the application. I think you'll find your own cadence, but I'm in the habit of watching the video first, and then going through to read the application after I've watched it.
All right, next question.
Yes. At what stage are our applications added to the solutions bank?
They will be added to the solutions bank. I think once we've announced the finalists is roughly our plan, to then put applications into the candidate solutions bank.
Great. I see a couple follow-up questions related to those 15 optional reviews. Can we explain just a little bit more about how those appear and how you work through them?
Yeah, I think Ethan has demonstrated that a couple of times now here on the screen. But once you complete your 5 reviews, a new one will appear in open reviews, just one at a time, and that'll happen 15 times. And again, it's not required, but you do have to complete 5 reviews first.
Great. Sorry, just seeing we've got a few minutes left. Anything we have not yet covered?
There's a question about, is it correct that only one application will be funded, or could the second or third best be considered for some level of funding? And let me talk about this a little bit. There is one $100 million grant from Mcarthur. However, we are committed, and part of what the value of this 100&Change process has been, is that we uncover really good ideas, many good ideas, and we're committed to helping those other ideas get matched up with other funders. In the first round of 100&Change, we have thus far, we think, leveraged, we're still trying to calculate all the numbers, up to about $350 million in additional funding for projects that were in our top group, up the top 200 of applicants. And we are kind of really being more deliberate and strategic about doing that this time as well. We can collaborate with others who are trying to source good ideas. We curate lists from that solutions bank, so we'll get calls asking us for what are some good applications that are working on youth leadership or gender and climate change, or just to give some examples. And so we are really committed to doing as much as we can to promote the good ideas that come through this competition.
Jenny, there's a question here about overall score that I want to address. So the overall score seems to be a general impression and may not directly correlate with the 4 individual scores. Is that correct? That is correct. So that overall impression is in the unlikely event of a tie, we use that as a tiebreaker. So it's just an incremental decimal point that gets added on to the total score for an application.
Great, thank you, Lynn. One question here about the bibliography sources. If we do not do so, will future reviewers interrogate our bibliography sources?
Yes, should the application advance.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much for all of your questions. I know we're here at the last couple of minutes. I just want to again reiterate the deadline. I'm a little bit of a one-note band here, but it is critical that you complete your 5 required reviews no later than Wednesday, September 18th, 2019 at 11 a.m. U.S. Central Time. Please, please, please send us any questions that you might have well in advance of that deadline. You can reach us at questions@100&change.org. We have a great team that is super responsive, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Cecilia for some final words.
Yes, thank you again for the work that you are doing to solve problems out there in the world. I think what you'll find as you start to read some of these applications is that it is inspiring to know that there are others like you that are out there. You'll learn about issues that you may not have been aware of. You'll get some good ideas. You can share good ideas. And I appreciate the work that you have put into the application and the work that you're about to do in giving some feedback to other applicants. It all contributes to strengthening these projects and proposals and to improving the likelihood that we really can solve some of the problems that are out there. So again, congratulations for making it to this stage, and thank you.